former Minneapolis police officer now facing third-degree murder charges. We're going to speak with George's younger brother, Terrence Floyd, in just a few moments. But first,
Chauvin now behind bars and on suicide watch as he faces charges for third-degree murder and manslaughter. Chauvin's wife, Kelly, has filed for divorce.
We can't have two justice systems in America, one for Black America and one for white America. We have to have equal justice for the United States of America.
According to the criminal complaint, Chauvin had his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds in total. 2 minutes and 53 seconds of this was after Mr. Floyd was non-responsive.
Almost 3 minutes after he was unconscious, they still kept the knee on his neck and still kept their knees on his back. We think that these other 3 officers should be arrested too.
Overnight, Minneapolis Police Chief Madaria Arredondo addressing Floyd's family directly on live TV, calling those officers complicit.
Being silent or not intervening, to me, you're complicit. So I don't see a level of distinction any different. Mr. Floyd died in our hands, and so I see that as being complicit.
Police records show Chauvin also had 18 complaints filed against him over 19 years. He was disciplined twice. Meanwhile, those closest to Floyd speaking out, his nephew who grew up in the same household with Floyd, describing him as a father figure.
If it was just advice about sports, life, school, anything, he was there. I mean, I can't really remember a time that I needed them and he wasn't.
And Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has now joined the prosecution of this case. Chauvin's court date has been pushed back. He's now due in court.
To a crowd of demonstrators, and officials are saying that those vehicles were being struck by rocks as well as other objects. Mayor Bill de Blasio came out late into the evening with a stern
knocking several people to the ground. The person who shot this video said the protesters were throwing trash and water bottles at the police vehicle at the time. No word yet as to whether anyone was hurt.
The video was upsetting, and I wish the officers hadn't done that, but I also understood that they didn't start the situation. The situation was started by a group of protesters converging on a police vehicle.
Full of violence, the level of attacks. Of course, you talk to police officers here that I've talked to, that I've dealt with, they're all upset over what happened in Minneapolis.
Police as well as protesters, but these protesters were on the move, at one point shutting down the Manhattan Bridge. And there was also some disturbing images of dumpsters, trash cans, and police vehicles going up in flames, also storefronts.
So you walk through these streets today, I have to tell you, having been in New York City my whole life and having covered protests as a reporter, as a journalist, I have not seen this level of violence. The fires, yes, they're trash fires, but they were being set, all across Manhattan, Union Square area, Chelsea area, police vans being set on fire, barricades being thrown through police vehicles.
This is a local CBS reporter and her cameraman in Louisville, Kentucky, apparently shot with pepper balls while live on the air. Later, the police apologized to the station. But we've seen other reporters, here's Dallas, for example, other reporters being hit by rubber bullets, by tear gas. There are these situations we've seen in a number of different cities. I'll read some other examples to you. A reporter in Columbia, South Carolina was hit by a rock and had to be taken to the hospital. Here's a freelance photographer in Minneapolis who was shot in the left eye while covering the protest. She says she's been blinded in one of her eyes as a result. In Chicago, a Chicago Tribune photographer said looters shoved and stole her cameras. In D.C., this is in Washington, in Lafayette Park, a Fox News crew was harassed and then chased out of the park by protesters who were cursing and screaming at Fox News and criticizing right-wing media. This is deplorable behavior by protesters. We've also seen in Las Vegas the arrests of 2 photographers. Police took these photographers into custody. That is completely inappropriate.
Respondent Omar Jimenez being arrested by state police in Minnesota. We're not sure why our correspondent is being arrested.
Hang on one second, Allison. Let's listen into what these officers are saying.
Our CNN producer is being...
I'm probably going to be taken in a minute.
Our CNN camera crew and our producer are being arrested right now on live. If you're just tuning in, this is our camera crew, our CNN camera crew, being arrested by the Minneapolis State Police. We believe the camera is now on the ground because our cameraman has been handcuffed. Our correspondent, Omar Jimenez, was...
It was a heart-stopping moment. A semi-truck driving through a crowd of peaceful protesters on an interstate highway.
People are pretty shocked, and it was a traumatic experience.
Some protesters then swarmed the truck and attacked the driver. Others protected him. He was later arrested. Incredibly, no protesters were injured. It's still not clear why he did it.
What is going on? I pulled my camera out. This man cannot breathe at all. He's like, breathe, I can't breathe, and they did not care. They killed this man. And I was like 5 feet away. It is so traumatizing.
The staff that called the police followed protocol. When he identified the bill was fake, the patron was out of the establishment. When the police arrived, he was outside of the establishment, which normally never takes place. Why he was still there, we're not sure.
Owner Micah Bominiali says what happened on the street outside his establishment should never have ended with a man dying.
Most of the time when patrons give us a counterfeit bill, they don't even know it's fake. So when the police are called, there's no crime being committed. They just want to know where they got it from. And that's usually what takes place. This was a very circumstantial event that ended in a tragedy, and unfortunately, we're taking a lot of animosity for it.
He understands people are upset, but feels their anger should be used to get the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Floyd's death.
For those who say if the police hadn't been called, he wouldn't be alive, how does that staff member feel about that?
That may be rightfully so. However, we cannot predict the future. If I was there, things would have been handled differently.
This business owner says he is prepared to do what he can for the family.
We want to offer, first and foremost, our deepest condolences, and we want to give any support, if it's financially, socially, spiritually, any type of support they need.
Reg Chapman, WCCO 4 News.
Cup food owners say that video from the store, which they've been asked not to release, shows that Floyd was not resisting officers. They have offered to pay for Floyd's funeral expenses.
I need for those guys to know that what they did was just uncalled for. Someone could do their kids like that. It could happen to anybody. Raising boys coming up in this generation is very hard because you never know what could happen when they walk out the door. They're small kids right now, but one day they're going to be adults. They're going to be out here in this society, and they need to know what's right and what's wrong. They need to know how to defend themselves, how to stand up for themselves, how to talk for themselves. Because if I don't teach that to them, this world, this cold, cold world would take over my babies.
I want to express our nation's deepest condolences and most heartfelt sympathies to the family of George Floyd. A terrible event, terrible, terrible thing that happened. I've asked that the Department of Justice expedite the federal investigation into his death and do it immediately, do it as quickly as absolutely possible. It's a local situation, but we're also making it into a federal situation, and it's a terrible thing. We all saw what we saw, and it's very hard to even conceive of anything other than what we did see. Should never happen, should never be allowed to happen, a thing like that. But we're determined that justice be served. And I spoke to members of the family, terrific people, and we'll be reporting as time goes by. We think that we also have to make the statement, and it's very important, that